Hello and welcome to Never Mind the Bar Charts with myself, Mark Pack. Or rather, welcome to another special joint edition with John Potter and the Lib Dem Pod team. Just before I hand over to John, a quick reminder of my weekly email newsletter all about political polling, The Week in Polls. You can sign up to it for free at theweekinpolls.co.uk. And with that, over to John.
We are in week 3 already of this general election, and I'm John Potter from the Lib Dem podcast, joining up again with President Mark Pack from the Never Mind the Bar Charts podcast, where we're going to go through exactly what's happened this week, what does it mean going forward, and how we as a group of activists can make the best use of our time. First of all, hello Mark, welcome back again. How has your week been?
I'm in no way panicking about how soon the first postal votes go out. I'm not thinking about it.
Yes, rather worrying. A journalist said that they expect some ballots to arrive today, which is very, very, very early. But we are in that week before postal vote, so it is a very important week. And join us, we are delighted, first time on the podcast, is Baroness Liz Barker. Hello, Liz. Welcome very much. Thank you for coming on.
Liz.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be asked for the first time ever. You've only existed as a sort of imaginary thing in my life. So
we should just point out, it's actually been, I don't know, I mean, the Never Mind the Bar Charts podcast is a little bit older than Lib Dem, but we had our 5-year anniversary kind of back in the day. And I was just thinking how we set this up in the aftermath of the 2019 locals and the European elections, and how the UK has changed from then to now is absolutely phenomenal. But Mark, I suppose we'll get into the meat of it. So what has been your impressions first of this last week, where we've had all sorts of issues? But
it's just bizarre, isn't it? It's just so strange. And you sort of think, are we the mad ones? Because why would you as a prime minister make a great play of patriotism, and you're a party that waves the union flag every possible opportunity? There's relatively little that the British public sort of latches onto about the Second World War. We boil it down to only 3 or 4 moments. D-Day is the sort of absolutely central to that, and then you go home early. And then Reform, who try to out-patriot the Conservatives, decide to top that by not just having a candidate who says, well, maybe we should have made peace with Hitler, but then the party spokesperson defends their view. And you just think, are they all mad, or is it we who are mad? It seems so strange.
Liz, are we the mad ones, or is this general election just gone a little bit kind of out of kilter?
Not a little bit. I mean, I've been through a fair number of them, and I don't think I've ever seen one quite as mad as this. I have to say. I mean, I just think the Tory campaign gets more and more special. I don't know who's doing it. I don't know how much they've been paid by us or Labour or whoever, but whoever is in there, just thinking up these, it's kind of the reverse of Ed's stunts, isn't it? Ed's stunts, oh, what can I do to make Ed look really good? All right, I'll make him look like a normal human being. What can I do with Rishi Sunak that'll make him look completely useless, out of his depth, and singular, Sarah Palin levels of incompetence. I mean, this is in terms of campaigning. I mean, this is just.
I think that's unfair to Sarah Palin, though, because Sarah Palin was quite good at appealing to her core vote.
I'm sorry, the words "unfair to Sarah Palin," I can't put those all together in one. I really just can't put those in one sentence. So no, it has, and I suppose what is as always is interesting is the way that the broadcasters have reacted, because they are in overdrive. I mean, you think back to elections gone past, and how you look at sort of Robin Day type interviews and how magisterial and informed political analysis you got. Now you get stunts and all this kind of thing. And even the most superficial of journalists just has to take one look at Rishi Sunak and think, oh, there's the story written very large. These people are incompetent, and it is having an effect. I have never, in all my days, I have never known the Tory vote to be so soft. I mean, Tories, they don't want to talk on the doorstep. They want to, they are so ill at ease with themselves. They're embarrassed, and that's what's getting them worse than anything, I think.
I'll just welcome David, because I didn't know David was invited, but I didn't know if it was going on. Hello, David. Are you welcome to us?
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. No, thank you very much for
Hi, David.
Hi.
To all our listeners and viewers, this is David Chadwick, who is our parliamentary candidate in Brecon, Radnor, and remind me the third bit?
Towie.
I just didn't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for coming on, David. The first time on the podcast. So we've just started talking about kind of what a kind of bonkers week it's been, and the collapse and the doom amongst the Conservatives. I mean, how are you picking that up in your seat, where obviously you are trying to take out a Conservative?
Yes, well, you talk about a bonkers mood. Well, it's a pretty bonkers constituency now, this one. It's 71 miles north to south, about 40 miles east to west. Very much a mixed tapestry of communities in terms of old rural communities, very much rooted in the farming tradition and farming communities. And then down in the southwest of the constituency, we have the expanded area of the Swansea Valley. So we almost go down to the M4 corridor now. So you're hearing very different things on very different areas of the constituency. Yes, I totally agree. As we're hearing from everyone else, the Conservative vote is very soft. Here, obviously, there's a bit of people are hearing different messages from different people. There are parts of the constituency where the Tory vote is marginally harder because of what they're seeing from Welsh Labour at the moment in the Senedd, in terms of Vaughan Gething clinging on for dear life, it looks like. So the messages I hear on the doorstep depend very much on where I am. But everybody does agree that it's time for change. I think here in this constituency, that presents us with that sort of 2010 opportunity to be the shiny new bright emblems of hope.
I suppose, Mark, I mean, what does this mean from Lib Dems when the Tories are, because I don't remember 97, I was alive during 97, but I wasn't politically active at that point. This, from all commentary I've seen, this feels worse, and that Tories are getting attacked from more sides with reform, us in a decent place. But what do Lib Dems have to do now to capitalise on this? And I suppose it's just not getting complacent.
Yeah, well, I think there are two things. One is that there are a lot of undecideds out there, and I've always in the past been a little bit sceptical when someone says, "Oh, I went canvassing and there were all these undecideds," as to whether either they weren't that good a canvasser or actually the undecideds were really polite but anti.
Yeah,
I think this time, though, it finally is true that there really are, and you see that not just in our canvas feedback, but also in the polls. There is a very high number of undecideds, and so the range of plausible outcomes from here on is actually very broad. The second thing, though, is that we are almost certainly going to perform massively better in seat numbers than in vote share. Obviously, we hope to have a good story to tell on both, but seat numbers is what it is all about. And that is tricky, because what that does mean is, whether David is successful or not is massively important. I hope that the PPC in the seat that I live in gets, his vote goes up on last time. But to be honest, I would be very surprised if we win the seat that I live in. And David actually in that sense matters much more than many of our other PPCs and their campaigns. And we absolutely have to respect all of the huge volunteer effort that people are putting in all around the country, but balancing building up our parties locally with really piling in to help people like David and his colleagues is in a sense the key task for the remaining stretch of the campaign. Because 2019, our vote share went up by nearly half. We weren't all celebrating what a brilliant 2019 election result it was. It's seats. That's the metric for success.
And it's a really strange one, because for those of us who know, when we've done talking about canvassing and how you analyse your data on previous episodes, that when you get a won't say, that when you put it into your Chester formula, you put 50% of won't say is probably going to vote for your alternative. Now, I wonder this time, it's not in terms of we don't want to tell you because we're either being too nice or we're shy Tories or whatever else. There is actually a genuine thing of, if I'm not Tory this time, where do I go? And I suppose, Liz, how Lib Dems deal with that is just asking those secondary questions and just remember and just trying to work out where that vote is going. But also, regardless if you get that data or not, putting your best foot forward, making sure you have your leaflets, making sure you're giving the message you need to, especially in those target seats.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things I would say. I mean, it's not like 97. It doesn't feel the same as 97 because in 97, people would openly say, I want a Labour government. You know, they not only wanted to see the back of the Tories, they wanted a Labour government. They do not say that now. I mean, certainly, well, I mean, I live in a very heavily Tory area, but I don't in the other areas that I've been to, and I haven't been to very many this time, I don't get any sense of the enthusiasm for the Starmer government that there was for the Blair government. The space that I think that opens up for us is not just to not be the Tories, but to be the people for whom people can vote because we have got a positive message of change. And I think that one of the things that happened this week that I was most that cheered me up the most was our manifesto launch. I mean, we've had a couple of weeks of Ed knocking about, you know, getting coverage by being a bit daft, right? But if you, like me, listen to Radio 4, us then getting our position covered third place in terms of the political news, which has not happened in, you know, for about the last 8 or 9, 10 years. But yesterday, with the manifesto launch, there was Ed putting forward a whole bunch of really solid practical policy points of view and taking questions and standing that up. Now, I think the job is for us now to go back on the doorsteps and be following up on those key messages and key points of detail. You know, people, I live in Wimbledon, whereas you may know the last time round we were 628 votes away from winning the seat. And how we did that was I think is something that's become quite interesting for you. To explain it, I need to go back to I think it was 1997. I can never quite remember. We had a wonderful guy called Nick Harris who was our paper candidate in Mitcham and Morden, and at some unearthly hour of the night, a small local radio station was interviewing Nick Harris, and they said to him, "Well, Mr. Harris, tonight you have won Richmond, you've won Twickenham, you've won Sutton, you've won Kingston, you've won Carshalton, and you, sir, have saved your deposit in Mitcham and Morden. What do you have to say?" To which Nick Harris, quick as a flash, said, "Well, we've got them surrounded." Now, Mitcham and Morden is one half of the borough of Merton, the other one is Wimbledon. And the story in Wimbledon is that for the last 30 years, we have plugged away at local government. We have had times when we had one councillor in one ward in West Barnes. And what we have done steadily over time, people like Anthony Fairclough fighting a council seat 3-4 times before he actually got in. We have plugged away. And then we've had political events like Brexit and so on come along, which has, you know, brought us in new members and and got us into a sort of different position than we were before. But all throughout, we have steadily built ourselves up to the point where, you know, we are the most marginal seat. One thing that we also did as Wimbledon Liberal Democrats throughout that time, we went to support the other seats that needed help. We went everywhere. We went Southwark, Guildford, you know, anywhere that needed to go. Now we got to the point where it's an election where I'm not going out of my ward hardly. I did go to Guildford the other night, and I do say to everybody in the southeast, please do go and help in Guildford because we have got a real chance there. But one of the other things that I think that we really need to do crucially at this point is not get carried away. You as a candidate or a team will be looking at your figures and thinking, my God, we could win this. we could come from a poor third and win this because these Tories are not voting. Well, no, you're not going to. And one of the biggest things that mistakes that we could make is to get carried away with local data and suddenly decide, right, well, we're not going to go to Guildford, we're going to stay where we are. Well, actually, if we miss Guildford by 100, 200, 1,000 votes, then that's a complete, that is so wrong, because we really do have to seize this opportunity this time round. If we don't come out of this, if we don't exceed expectations, then that is a failure. So I think we need to be absolutely clear. We're standing not just because we're not the Tories and we're not Labour, we're standing because we're us and we've got positive things to say to people, but we are being very, very realistic and still marshalling our resources in the places where we can bring them the most effect. And the next time we will be ready to take on people in Labour-facing seats in a way that we are nationalist seats in a way that we are not at the moment.
And I think, remember, for all of us who are campaigners, when you're analysing on a local election, when you're looking at, can I win that ward, you look at, Liz, you were talking about data. It's also about how much data you've got. So you think when you're analysing whether you can win a ward, you're thinking, do I have enough Ds and Ps, definites and probables, in order to take that across the whole spread of your ward? Now, times that by the size of a constituency. If you do not have that level of data, if you look at the places where we're really successful, you cannot make that judgment without that level of data. And that's when you can get carried away. I'm doing brilliantly in the ward I've represented. Yeah, but that's one ward out of a potential dozens within your constituency. So you do have to keep that in mind. But in almost perfect segue, because you've mentioned Wimbledon, one of the questions that has been asked to us is, when Ed's doing that interview while playing tennis, the amount of people have said, he's got a really good forehand. I tell you, he actually does play a bit of tennis. But Mark, do you know this? Is this something Ed's been working on secretly in HQ?
I can only say, I joked earlier in the week, I'm so relieved this election hasn't happened while I was sort of, interim joint leader of the party. I mean, what would have I had to do? I mean, but it is a really good example of, I think, how you need to be authentic in politics. Yeah. Because Ed is clearly enjoying himself, and that just, that has to come through in a way that makes the sense of fun feel like not just it's something to laugh at, but something that is reflecting well on him as, the leader of the party, somebody who is putting our message in front of the nation. I thought there was and I've mentioned this before, so apologies to people who've heard me say this before, but if you look at his facial expression the first time he fell into Lake Windermere, that's not, oh my goodness, I've fallen on that set. I am having the time of my life. All the rest of us had to cancel our summer holiday plans for the election. Ed is just plowing on with it, super speed.
And it was true. I mean, David, me and you were together in Wales when the Welsh was launched. It is. I mean, it is genuine. I had to drive Ed to his hotel and back because there weren't any taxis in the tiny village we were in. So I drove, and he is actually genuinely loving this campaign. He is enjoying. He's making sure the stunts are done right. But David, that energy and that optimism on Lib Dems is quite infectious at the moment.
Yes, we were in Knighton. One of the reasons we decided to go to Knighton or ask Ed to come to Knighton was because people in Knighton always say, well, nobody ever comes here, nothing ever happens. We don't see anyone from any party. And we thought, well, and then, those images of Ed cycling down the high street, very iconic cobbled high street with the Welsh flag and flag of Owain Glyndŵr in the background as well, is one that will.
And you in the background, people who have seen the photo of Ed, if you peer very carefully, there's James cycling sedately, and you looking almost slightly nervously round the corner at the steepness of the slope ahead of you.
I have been run over by a car on a bike in the Netherlands and broke my right leg in two. Plenty of
that gives you a good alibi for your look of caution in the background of those photos.
But if that had been in the Netherlands, we would all have been on one bike. The Dutch would have all got us on. We'd all have been on one bike somehow or other. Someone would have been sitting on the back and someone would have been in front. Next time round, that's what we can try.
Well, and there's method in these stunts as well. So we talk about those. So when we were in that Welsh launch with the bike, and Ed had to put his legs out and things like that, there was, like, obviously, again, we talked about this last, the amount of effort that goes into that, making sure the street is clear, there's no potholes, it's not too steep, it's going to be okay, there's space for the cameraman. This is a massive amount of work, but what it has done, and Liz is absolutely right in terms of, we've captured that attention, and there'll always be naysayers. There'll always be, oh, what's the point in this? But now, when it comes to the serious stuff, and we've talked now about the manifesto launch, we've already got like a level of entry into the mindset of people that then they can take on now the manifesto message. And now I don't know who's going to go first. I mean, Liz, we'll come to you first, actually, in terms of the manifesto launch. Now, I don't expect everyone to have read it, but it was obviously your call. I think Dick Newby was the person who was responsible for it. But again, manifesto and social media is not the real world, but generally the amount of charities and organisations that have come out saying, actually brilliant, the Lib Dems have come out with this, and we got there first, is a huge credit to staff and your colleagues, Liz.
Yeah, a couple of things I would say about that. There has been a huge amount of preparation. I mean, all those people who toil away in the salt mines of the Federal Policy Committee. I mean, they and people like Dick and Christian Moon really do, hats off to them. They do the hard yards that the rest of us don't have to do. But they've come out with a really good job. I mean, I happened to be, I've been delivering leaflets, so I didn't actually spend that much. I didn't see the launch very much. I saw the clips on the news, but I actually bothered to go and find the manifesto online. And I was, apart from anything else, I was really impressed by how accessible it was. You could just go and click on the environment, transport, housing, whatever. And there were these bullet points. And I was reminded, I can't remember, Chris Rannard would tell me the exact date, time, and hour when it was published. But we once brought out a manifesto, was it 97 or whatever? And our manifesto, instead of being a thick old booklet, was a newspaper. And everybody was completely, taken about the fact that we decided to bring out something that was readable at the time. And not only that, crucially, the costings stood up. So the accessibility of it, I thought, was great. And the other thing that I was struck by, just giving it a quick look through last night and this morning, was that I think that we not only have done the really important job of making the numbers stand up, but we've been quite clear about points of principle in the manifesto. Because believe me, however good it has been for the last 2 weeks, we are about to go into another 2 weeks in which the opposition, and particularly the Tories, are going to be desperate, and they will be somewhat vicious, and they will come after us. We've known all along that their big news is they want to do the culture wars stuff, which is, American ideology sort of brought over here and whipped up by and honed in various different campaigns. I actually think that we've seen examples of those tactics being used, and will be able to withstand it. But we will have to be on our mettle, because this great press and all that. I mean, well, we haven't had great press. We never get great press from the Telegraph and all those but they will really go for us. And actually, when it comes down to it, the manifesto is the thing on which we have to rely. And I think we've done a really good job with that.
I mean, you're right. My concern, I'll come to you next, David, is obviously there was a tweet by Rishi Sunak either yesterday or the day before that just said, I think it said like, no mercy for our criminals or something like that. And my worry is, there's been a general consensus in British politics about where campaigns should go. And I wonder, in their desperation, Liz, will the Tories do something really horrendous? And once that genie is out of the bottle, it can be very hard to put it back in. But
well,
Dave,
they have been moving towards a situation which they have been pushed towards by the right wingers, which is ripping up our international legal obligations, walking away from the European Convention on Human Rights, overturning all that. And And people, I mean, there are instances where they have done that, not just the Rwanda thing, but on some of the stuff that Kemi Badenoch has done on the Equality Act has been, has been about that. We no longer take our lead on human rights for women and girls from the UN and the EU. We're now equating ourselves with places like Iran. So I think that if they are pushed hard enough, they will go beyond those limits of those settled agreements on Britain upholding international law and decent standards. And that I think the thing that makes me feel confident about that is because when that is done in the full glare of an election campaign, then there is a chance that people will actually understand the reality of what that is. That is about turning us into a pariah state. And I don't think people in Britain want to be that. We want to be the country that was at D-Day, not just because of who we were and exceptionalism, but because we shared and understood a common humanity with the rest of the world. That's what that was all about.
And David, how do you think it's going to affect you on the ground campaigning if the Tories continue this kind of culture war sort of approach to the rest of the campaign?
I think it's hardening up our vote, actually. The further they lurch to the right, the more disgusted people become. Their own supporters aren't listening to them anymore. They have an enormous credibility gap. People just don't believe they're capable of anything. We're listening to their voters say, yes, well, I've moved on. I'm looking for somebody else. I don't think there's anything the Conservatives can say in the next couple of weeks that will turn that around for them. What I'm finding very effective when I'm going out canvassing in terms of our national party messaging, which I think is perfect for the constituency of Brecon, Radnor and Cwmtawi in terms of talking about the NHS, social care and stopping sewage dumping. Those are just perfect national messages that we could put on any leaflet that we're putting out, and they would go down very well here, particularly in the more rural areas. When I go out canvassing, I'm always trying to drill a couple of figures into my head of what's going on in the local GP practices. So you can find data on how many people are registered in your local GP practice. If I turn up on people's doorsteps and I say the NHS is broken, they sort of say, yeah, but you can see it doesn't really sink in. But when I turn up in Brecon and say, did you know that there are 15,500 patients registered here in Brecon? That's when people go, oh, that's a lot. That's why I can't get through to see my GP. And then we say, yes. And then we say, well, do you know how long it takes to get a new GP, to train a new GP from start to finish? Minimum of 10 years. And that you can really see people going, gosh, okay, that's not good. And conversations I've had that obviously I also relay when I'm on the doorstep, conversations I've had with GPs, consultants, and so on, is they're telling me every morning we wake up and we get an email from Australia, Canada, or New Zealand saying, come and work here, double the pay, half the work. And they're saying to me, David, why would we stay? And that makes it, if you can get those points across, it makes it really easy to convince anyone in front of you that this is why the NHS needs an urgent injection of cash. Because if we're talking about a 10-year lag time to get new GPs into your local surgery, you're going to want those people coming in very quickly, and that's why you need a new government immediately.
So,
the other thing is that there is an international shortage of medical staff at all levels. And putting up, it's one of the untold things of Brexit, that making ourselves a less attractive place for professionals to work has a massive impact on that.
I think David's point also illustrates why our policy about increasing the retention rate amongst GPs is so important. Because I know this has sometimes caused a bit of debate in the party about, how many actual new GPs are we going to recruit? But actually, as David illustrates, in the short term, the way to up GP numbers is to reduce the number of GPs leaving the profession each year. That's your immediate, as it were, emergency short-term effect, alongside needing to get things right in the longer term as well for getting more people into the profession. And similar issue with dentists very much as well. I've been quite struck talking to our sort of top canvassers every other evening, how often actually dental services comes up, because I had sort of taken the view that in a way dental services have been sort of privatized salami slice, over the years, that so many people are just now used to that, oh, well, you have to pay private to get dental care, and that therefore that didn't quite have the same emotional impact for people as other health services where we haven't had that decades-long salami slicing. But really struck how often actually dental services are coming up, which shows just how bad things are getting.
And I can remember from a personal point of view, I mean, we've done various dental kind of press releases from HQ over the last 12 months, 18 months. And I did just the basic one, where you get a template, you tweak it slightly, get the journalist a photo, send them. It ended up on the front page of the Lancashire Telegraph, which is a bit that isn't really my bit, just because, again, I think the dentistry and the idea that, kids now, 40% of kids haven't seen a dentist in a year or something like that. And some of the figures are absolutely horrendous. But Mark, if, as David is saying, that voters are no longer listening to the Tories, even the Tories, who are they listening to, and what will that mean come polling day and for the rest of our campaigning?
I mean, I think there is also a huge level of cynicism about politicians' promises. And I think that's why you see actually from Labour as well as actually from us in different ways. Labour has got their missions. They've not gone for a Tony Blair style pledge card of actually very specific policies. They've gone for missions as a way of trying to deal with that cynicism. And I think, we've gone for a slightly different approach, which is about, in a way, demonstrating Ed's deep personal commitment. And, why can you trust the more power the Lib Dems have in the next parliament, the better news that will be for NHS and social care, partly because of the policies and the sorts of detail that, David uses so successfully on the doorstep. But it's about Ed's personal commitment. He is clearly somebody who understands this issue, is very passionate about it. And in that sense, it's almost about presenting our values, and the policy is helpful as a corroboratory thing. But it's do people buy into Ed's personal commitment is much the bigger bit for the national story. Obviously, what will make the real difference, in seats like David's and in seats like, Wimbledon that Liz was mentioning, is the local campaign. But in terms of the national message, it's quite a different one in a way from what we've tried in several previous elections. Almost, one might say, a little bit Paddy Ashdown-esque.
And okay, so we've talked a little bit about the manifesto launch. We're going to talk about a little bit about candidates, just very, very briefly. Obviously, delighted with the amount of candidates we have. I think we're standing in all but one constituency, and this is a lesson. This is not
all but two, but
is it two? Sorry, but
yeah.
I can remember there's one in the Northwest, which is one of the Manchester seats. Okay, and there's all sorts of reasons behind that. But what I will say to all people watching this who've done local elections, and we've said this before, don't leave your nomination papers till the last day, because you don't know if something's going to come up. You don't know if there's something awkward. And if in doubt, if you get your papers in 2-3 days, a week beforehand, however quickly you can get them in, it gives you a chance to sort this issue out. And I was in a position, I told Mark privately last week that I had handed in my forms, had them all double checked by officers, but they refused to actually say that it had been accepted until after the nominations had closed, which was, I mean, this was a local authority that I'm not used to dealing with, because normally I deal with Preston's election office, and they would give you a written paper straight away. Congratulations, you're on the paper. So me and my agent basically didn't stop hounding them right up to the chief exec until we knew that I was definitely on that paper. Because obviously, if you've got stuff going out on Royal Mail and everything else, you have a duty to make sure you're on that. So again, if in doubt, make sure you do it early, and it saves you most of these problems will be resolved if you do it. But other than that, Mark, like you said, I think any other comment you would like to make regarding the candidates that have come forward? Obviously, you mentioned about some of the Reform candidates already having dodgy past, but generally your view on where the parties stand?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe one thing to mention about candidates is I think it's really impressive how many of our candidates in sort of non-target seats have shown really good leadership in combining, saying, right, let's find our target council ward for, say, maybe next May elections. Let's go out, let's recruit some new deliverers there so that we're in a stronger position out of this campaign. And at the weekend, let's go to a target seat and help get an extra MP, help get an extra Lib Dem on the regional media news, in the run up to next year's local elections as well. And I think that sort of home and away, as it were, combination, I think is really effective where it's happening. And, we should be hugely grateful for everything that anyone is doing. But seats is the thing that's going to be the real difference between triumph or failure in a few weeks' time. But if alongside that, local parties, like say, for example, yours, John, if your local party comes out of this in a stronger place to win yet more council seats at future elections, and John Potter leads Preston Council might not be quite such a fanciful idea one day.
And there's an old adage, it's all about the next election rather than the current one. And for us, we have had a plan. Obviously, we know that, making sure Cheadle, Hazel Grove, Tim Farrancy are all kind of wins in a couple of weeks' time. But we're also thinking we've got our county elections next year. So the efforts we are doing is putting in, okay, what is the benefit of that? Because if you're in a seat, if you're in part of the seat I'm fighting, and you know that there's going to have very little campaigning for the next 5 years, any effort you do now is basically it's just going to fritter away. It's not going to have, it's about consistency of effort. And I suppose, Liz, that goes to your point, is like, where are you going to put your effort where it'll be maximised for future return?
Correct. We did exactly what Mark said. We concentrated in Wimbledon in the wards that we had to, and then we went and helped other people and came back, and we always had a plan to build it up. Just to go back to candidates, and this is an issue which I might address to our president, because this is my best way to send messages to him, I think.
Absolutely, I'm listening. I've got my notepad ready.
An issue which has come up a couple of times in the last couple of elections is there are academics and people who study our candidates. They want to know the diversity in the profile, and in the past we've got caught up in sort of GDPR things. So we've been unable to say, well, actually, we've got more LGBT candidates than anybody else because of a bureaucratic thing. My sense is that we've got a more diverse candidate base. I think it is a source of unending frustration to me that when we had more men than women MPs, Women's Hour never shut up about it. When we've had more women than men MPs, they've never said a word about it, and that's a fact. I think that if we have got diversity, I think we do in all sorts of different ways. I'd love to think we've got more science graduates, whatever. That is something that I think that we really should. We should. I think it's an asset, and it's a campaigning asset. Actually, I mean, I don't know. For example, I don't know. I've never known who we've got her candidates that will speak to particular communities, but I know that when it comes to GLA elections and stuff like that, having candidates who can speak to different, with knowledge to different communities is important. So I'd like to see us make the best of that resource. And I'd also like to see us give Women's Hour one in the eye for their prejudice towards the Liberal Democrats.
And actually, I guess Hina in London is a really good example of that, isn't she? So Hina Bakari was elected last election, but won to the London Assembly as one of our list candidates. And because she was therefore an incumbent in the London Assembly elections earlier this year, she was able to lead our work in reaching into new Muslim communities that we'd not really got into before in Hounslow, which was a big part of why we won the South West London seat. And it also obviously helped her get re-elected on the list as well. And I think that's a really important part of, I guess I suspect when all the dust is settled, what we will find after this election is that we have done pretty well at the diversity of the parliamentary party of those who've got elected, but that because our attention has been so focused on the most winnable seats, that we've not done nearly as well amongst sort of candidates further down the list. And I think that, that's a glass half empty, glass half full thing. I think what it shows is where we really put effort in, we could make a difference and make ourselves more diverse, more representative of the country we seek to represent and so on. But my goodness, when we don't put that effort in, there's still a problem of, as it were, backsliding. It's something we absolutely have to continue to stay focused on.
Yeah. David, any comment on candidates before we move on to our final bit, just talk about the week ahead? Anything you want to mention?
No.
Okay, that's lovely. Right, I love that. Love and shortly answers. So I suppose I'll come to you first on this one, David. Is what do you expect over this next week? Obviously, we have mentioned really big week and a bit now as postal votes start to land. We'll have the Tory manifesto coming out. We'll have the Labour manifesto coming out. Do they matter? Is that a big signal point in this election? But what are you expecting over this next week?
One of the things I'm finding very exciting at the moment, actually, is the amount of media interest we're getting from BBC, ITV Wales, and other news channels. In that, when the YouGov MRP poll dropped, which had the Tories holding on to this seat on 31%, us on 28%, Labour on 18%, and Plaid on 11 or 12, our inboxes sort of exploded. And I had an interview with BBC Wales a couple of days later, and they turned up and they very openly said, "We didn't expect you to have a chance in this election, but it looks like you do." And since then, as I said, I think we've had approaches from nearly every media organisation in Wales. So that really shows what a big difference this election could make to us here in Brecon, Radnor and Cwmtawey. Because if we can get back on the map, it's going to create such media interest in the Welsh Liberal Democrat Party that can really spur us on for the next 2 years as we head towards the Senedd elections.
But Liz, your thoughts of what's to come this week?
I think there will be an awful lot of poring over the manifestos, and then I rather suspect that once that show has played out quite a bit, we'll then get into more detailed areas of policy. And the Tories will want to be dragging away from the economy and onto the sort of culture wars stuff. And I think that we ought to be ready to batten that back. I think that the temptation for us might be to go away from the economy a bit. We shouldn't. We should just we should really stick with that. And I think that there will be a bit more. I mean, I think the broadcasters will probably be. They'll be doing the leaders' interviews and trying to sort of pick their way through that. It is interesting to see just how uncomfortable at different times both Rishi Sunak and Starmer both feel and appear. And it'll be interesting to see whether the broadcasters sort of sent blood on that and go for it. So it'll get quite tense. So I think the real game for us is to do two things: to stick with the economy, not to get pulled into the culture war stuff, to stay on the ground that we want, and also to be taking a lot more nationally, talking a lot more about Wales, Scotland. Northern Ireland's not had a look in this election so far, and yet there is a lot going on in Northern Ireland, and also regionally to do a lot more regional attention.
Mark, and finish us
off. But please not get carried away in thinking that we're going to win in places we've never ever won. Yeah.
Absolutely right. Now is not the time to suddenly decide that your seat is a target seat.
No.
Mark, your thoughts for the week to come?
Yeah. So I guess two thoughts. One is very much agree with Liz's point about the culture wars. You know, the best way of beating the would-be Conservative culture warriors is to beat them in the ballot box by sticking to the issues that matter most to voters. You know, the way we get some of those really unpleasant figures in the Conservative Party out of politics is by talking about the NHS, sewage, cost of living, and helping the public vote them out in a few weeks' time. But actually, the first members of the public, as I said right at the beginning, are going to be voting in only a few days' time. And I can't quite work out if that is scary or brilliant, because it's sort of a bit of both. You know, I think things have been going pretty well for us in this campaign so far. So there's a bit of, you think, let's try to get some votes in before anything can go wrong. But there is nonetheless a huge chunk of work to be done still to win over the undecided people in the places that matter most to us. So with whatever mix of fear and excitement, we definitely should all try to double down our efforts in the next few days on helping reach the postal voters in our target seats, because they're about to cast a verdict on, you know, people like David. And, you know, somebody like David has put so much time and effort in over such a long period of time. You know, and there was a really moving piece actually posted by one of the Lib Dem team at the election count, where Joe was defeated in 2019, and just the first-hand account of what it is like to be in the hall when the votes are counted and your candidate is losing by just a tiny handful of votes. You know, it's been lovely if in all sorts of other places our votes go up a bit, But if it's the couple of extra postal voters that we win over that gets David and colleagues over the line, that's the thing that really matters.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much to David, to Liz, and to Mark, of course, for coming on this episode. You can catch all our episodes. They're all available wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're on the Lib Dem podcast YouTube channel, by all means, check us out. We've got loads of stuff on there. Also practical stuff on how to canvass, what data you're looking for, and all the rest of it that we try and provide you support with. We'll have loads more episodes coming up during this campaign. We're going to try and see what we can do with the manifesto to make something that you can listen to along as you're delivering your leaflets. I think that will be a fun innovation we might try and do. But
are you going to sing the manifesto, John?
What, the Liberator songbook?
No, definitely just out.
There is a challenge to all those people who write songs for the Liberators. Right, take a chapter of the manifesto and set it to a well-known tune. Go on.
Don't give Mark Pack any more ideas about setting things to tunes. He has many a gambit on this podcast about trying to leave you in song titles or anything else. But it is exciting. I'm actually generally really positive. You know, as someone who sees data, who goes to target seats, who's campaigning in my own patch, I think Lib Dems are in a great place. But let's not wake up on July 5th thinking, damn it, we just missed out again. Because that missing out on an opportunity is a real gut punch. And actually, this is a genuine opportunity for us to make serious gains and change British politics. So thank you very much for everything that you're all doing. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll be back with more episodes very soon.
Hope it's not another 5 years. Thank you.